I'm Sherry. Welcome to Stories. This week, Julia spends her days meeting people of all kinds on the Black Sea. And now, without further ado, here is Chapter 5 of A Wrinkle in the Old Cliff. Practice by Julia Frenz. I am at the nearest, what should I call it, coffee stand? It's a kiosk where they serve coffee and vodka. Not coffee and vodka together. I suppose you could put vodka in your coffee, but that sounds disgusting. Customers sit outside in a patio-like setting along the sidewalk. So I'm sitting in the sunny patio under a shade tree, my back to the street, just enjoying my crappy coffee and a cigarette. It only took them 10 minutes to make the coffee this morning. That must be a record. Usually the whole coffee-making process takes up to 45 minutes, while they frown and flap their hand, barking, "Сейчас, сейчас," meaning just a second. I suspect it's because I may be the only one ordering coffee first thing in the morning, and they have to scramble to set up the machine and remember how to use it. I'm used to it now, but I learned that сейчас means now, so it sounded weird to me when I first heard it in this context. It's Sunday morning around 8 o'clock. A trembling man walks up to the counter. He orders vodka and gets it right away. No need to wait for that. He grabs the glass and downs the whole thing in one gulp. I wince. They sell vodka by the glass, or stakan. A glass holds 8 ounces. In times gone by, polite society would drink their vodka from a charka. This glass was smaller and held 4 ounces. There are 5 bottles of vodka sitting right there on the counter, ready to go. A few minutes later, another gentleman comes along and does the same thing. Then an older man walks up, maybe in his 60s, but possibly 40, orders vodka, and sits down. This is a switch. He takes out a plastic jug of water, a loaf of bread, and a small knife. I watch while he cuts the bread. Sunday morning breakfast in Russia, I thought. Well, at least he's taking care of himself. I mean, he's staying hydrated and eating something to soak up all that vodka. Suddenly, a human figure, or what once passed as human, materializes out of the ether. He is old, filthy, he smells, and he is beat up. I quickly look away at anything but the impending and immediate encroachment of my private space in the form of utter and absolute human degradation. I am mortified. And then I think of my mother's words. "You know, Julia, we were all little babies at one time." Yes, Mom, that's true, even though sometimes it's hard to believe. Really, really hard to believe. I look at the trees, the sky, my table. Out of the corner of my eye, I see the ever-looming threat of him drawing closer and closer, as though I am a magnet for this broken remnant of Homo Sovieticus. No, not me. Please don't come over here. Sit somewhere else. Why me? He slowly sets his cigarettes on my table, not taking his eyes off me, and then gasps, "Vodka," in a hoarse whisper. Does he want me to buy him vodka? I point to the cafe that is 5 feet behind him. He walks in the back door, and they chase him out. He goes to the front counter and orders his vodka. Upon receiving the said vodka, he turns around and heads straight back to me. He slowly pulls out a chair, staring at me, as if asking my permission. I sigh. He looks very, very sad. I nod my head. "Duh," I say, weakly. What else can I do? He sits down, puts a cigarette to his lips, and pleads with his eyes. I light his cigarette for him. And suddenly he starts crying. You know, one of those silent cries when your head bobs up and down, your mouth is in full grimace, and all you can do is give full vent to the misery welling up inside you. Tears are streaming down his face. He sniffs really hard because mucus, I hate the word snot, is falling right into his lap. He looks down at his lap and sniffs again. Then he raises his head, looks at me, and says in a high-pitched, hysterical but quiet spasm of agony, "Izvinite." Excuse me. I nod and shift in my chair. This is agonizing. I sip my disgusting coffee and light another cigarette. My day is off to a great start. I look around and think, what a beautiful morning. The new spring leaves on the trees are fully out now, and the soft sea breeze moves the speckled light gently around the small cafe. Should I leave? Did I pick the wrong place? Is this a bar masquerading as a sidewalk cafe? I look around and notice that no one is paying any attention to us. Nobody cares about the crying man. I guess they've seen it before, but I haven't. Finally, he looks at his vodka and points. I said, "Please do," in Russian, of course. He looked grateful and quickly inhaled the whole thing. Having consumed these 8 ounces of alcohol as if drinking a glass of water on a hot day, he lets out a big sigh and stares up at the sky, blinking the tears from his eyes. I had to bite my cheeks to keep from laughing. I know it's not funny, and I'm not unfeeling nor insensitive. The poor man is obviously at the end of his rope, but it was the look on his face that somehow said, "Life is shit, and I've taken all that I can take, and I can't take no more." I hear you, buddy. I've been there, just recently, as a matter of fact. Then I agree. It's a fucked up world, it really is. Then he asked me something. Yes, he actually formed a coherent thought and said, "Where do you live?" "Here," I said. I asked him where he lived. He said Moscow, and mentioned something about his son. I finished my coffee and left. Poor old guy. As usual, I eventually migrate to the beach. I meet different men every day. It's a great way to practice Russian, because they're all friendly and always buy me coffee or champagne. 2 guys from Minsk, Belarus bought some champagne yesterday called Sovietskaya. It's delicious. Its lightness and bubbliness makes me feel light and bubbly. Sometimes I wonder if they put something in it at the factory. Drinking with the Belarusians was the first time I'd ever tried it. This morning I arrived at the beach around 10 a.m. for my first dip in the Black Sea. There is no sand on this beach. Imagine a beach that's full of stones, not sharp ones, but stones, nevertheless. You cannot lie on those. Is this natural or man-made? Is lying on a beach pernicious? Is it antisocial? Is it conducive to rebelliousness and wanting to tear your government down? I'm trying to figure out why there was no sand on the beach where people from all over Russia come for vacation. But this was the case. Really fucking odd. There I was, picking my way through the stones and then into the water. I left my wallet, towel, and cover-up on the pier. It's a cement walkway that juts out a short distance into the sea. I was treading water when I saw 2 men, they are always in twos, stop near my things. Because I am attached to my belongings and find it painful to part with them, I thought I would swim back and then leave. While gathering everything up and getting ready to make my exit, one of them asked if I wanted champagne. It was only 10 in the morning, so I laughed and said no. He said, "Well, how about some vodka then?" We started to talk a little. He said he was from Rostov and that his name was Bob. That's a good one. He explained that in the mafia, Rostov is the papa and Odessa is the mama. Rostov and Odessa are in Ukraine. They keep telling me that there is a big, old mafia down here in the south of Russia. At first he asked if I was from the Baltics. They all do. I'll have to go there someday and see if I look and sound like these Baltic people. Nina and Anna insist that I tell people I'm from anywhere except where I'm actually from. They prefer I say the Baltics. like Estonia or Lithuania or maybe Latvia. But I'm tired of being from the Baltics. Today, I decided to be from Hungary. He told me that he wasn't Russian. What are you? I asked. A puzzle, just like you, he said. I stepped into that one. From the very beginning of our encounter, he kept using English words like money and all right with his thumb in the air. He asked if I lived in Buda or Pest. I answered Buda, but I had to smile. I'm a lousy liar. What's the name of the sea in Hungary? Balaton, I said. It's no use, buddy. Unlike the Baltics, I've actually been to Hungary. I even lived there for 6 months. It's a good thing I said Hungary. I would have failed the 3rd degree on the Baltics. But it's stupid because what if you come across an intelligent person like this guy and he doesn't believe you, which he didn't? Then you look suspicious because you are lying. And then he taught me a new word for the day. Brežiš, he growled, curling his upper lip and smiling at the same time. I asked him what he meant. He said, "You lie," in more proper Russian. He walks away along the pier and as he's leaving says, "Fucking amazing." All right, whatever, I'm going home. I just wanted a quiet first dip in the sea, and I end up getting called a liar by a mafia guy who wants to ply me with champagne and/or vodka at 10 a.m., and now he's shouting curse words at me. Guess who I meet the next day? I meet him. Only this time, he's with a younger guy. The younger man is really nicely dressed. He has dark hair and eyes, but his skin is fair. It's like he's had no sun at all. They join me at my table as if I have been waiting for them. Young mafia boss is aloof and hardly looks me in the eyes. He seems preoccupied with something, not relaxed. The guy I met yesterday shows marked deference to this scion of organized crime. It's clear that the dark-eyed man is the boss. Suddenly, the Circassian prince, you never know, turns to me and asks, "How old do you think I am?" What? Is he doing a commercial for Pond's cold cream? Is he Catherine Deneuve? I was a little surprised by the question. This is what's on his mind. But I study his face for a few seconds and give it my best shot. 27, I said. He turned to his accomplice, or henchman, visibly upset, and started to scowl and raise his voice. I couldn't catch what he was saying, but I could see that his minion was trying to calm him down. Smiling and incredibly amused by the whole thing, Mr. Fucking Amazing finally explains to me that he is 27, and now he's suspicious. He thinks you are police. Are you people out of your minds? Did I come and sit with you? Who plunked themselves at my table without even asking permission? Well, tell him it was just a lucky guess, I said. I did tell him, but he doesn't believe it. Right, so now I am going to be tortured by the mafia because of some mafia boss's paranoid son. If I really were the police, would I answer the question correctly? If I knew how old he was, wouldn't I fudge the fact on purpose? I mean, would I want him to suspect me of knowing who he is? Oh, forget it. At least one of them understood the truth. I got up and told them I had to use the facilities. I walked past the restrooms and out the door, getting lost in traffic. I was talking with Anna, and I mentioned Lake Ritsa. It's a famous little spot that I read about in the travel literature. A beautiful little deep-water lake surrounded by mountains. She suggested that I go for it, find out about excursions on the bus, and go. It's in the mountains. Well, the next day, I found myself tearing around the city with André, a 24-year-old cop. I met him while he was sitting with 2 women and a man, and he just suddenly started to talk to me. He kept telling me that if I don't understand him, to tell him, and he will talk slower, which I thought was nice. He bought me an amaretto, and we agreed to meet at the manhole, a real manhole in the road, at 11 o'clock the next day. He really wanted to take me home, but I insisted on taking myself home. I don't want to make Anna more nervous than she already is. He drove me all over the city, sort of like a sightseeing tour, but he was nuts. This crazy cop should really have known better than to drive like such a maniac, because, after all, he belongs to the Street and Highway Patrol Unit. As we were, quote, driving, unquote, I casually asked if Lake Ritsa was very far. I thought maybe we'd stand a better chance if we got out of the traffic in the city and onto the open road. He said, "We can't go there. There's a war there. Bombs, guns, fighting, you know." No, as a matter of fact, I had no idea. I know there is fighting in Abkhazia in the Caucasus, but I didn't realize Lake Ritsa was part of that. I discovered later that Lake Ritsa is only 40 miles from Sochi and right in the middle of Abkhazia, and therefore part of that. And I thought, why would Anna suggest I take a drive through a war zone? But then I reasoned that, as Nina says, she just doesn't understand these things. I don't think she keeps abreast of current affairs, unless she's trying to get rid of me. She's got the money. What does she need me for? Needless to say, we never took that drive. I did go up to a dacha with him and his friends one rainy day, and we listened to music and, of course, drank. It was fun. However, due to his lethal driving habits, which unnerved me so much that I had nightmares, I ceased contact. I doubt he lived much longer after I met him. The lifeguard at what everyone calls the best hotel in Sochi, the Jemshuzhina, the Pearl, where I cannot buy an English-language newspaper, took me out in the lifeguard boat, and we rode around for a while. He explained to me why the Black Sea was called the Black Sea. I understood maybe half of what he said. He wants to teach me how to windsurf tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. No, thank you. I'm not the athletic type. A translator from Moscow named Arthur struck up a conversation with me at a cafe. His English was perfect, and I enjoyed speaking to him. I agreed to meet him the next day. We went to the apartment he was renting, drank wine, and spoke English. He asked if I would like to go to this club. I said sure. I gave him my number, and he said that he would try and get tickets. As I was leaving the apartment, I suddenly decided that I didn't want to go to the club, but it was too late, and how could I explain to him that I just wasn't interested in seeing him again? Capricious Capricorn. He called, and I told Anna to tell him that I had gone somewhere. He doesn't have a phone, but he managed to call 3 or 4 times last night. In fact, he called so much, once a day for about a week, that Anna barred the door with a shovel and suggested that I take the call next time. But I stubbornly refused to speak with him. I just really wasn't interested in him right from the beginning. I only wanted to speak English for a while, clarify some slang, and get an English-language newspaper that he said he would get me, and he did get me one. Amazingly enough, I ran into him a week later. I told him that I was busy conversing in English with students who wanted to practice their English. "I don't buy it," he said. He was so nice. He even bought me something to eat. He said he was bored and wanted to leave Sochi, but didn't know when he was leaving. I thought that was odd. When people go on vacation, do they not have a beginning and end date to it? I ran into Boris, a friend of Ruslan's, at the market this morning. Ruslan is a guy I met about a month after I arrived. He lives on my street. Boris said, "It's early. You're not sleeping?" I felt like saying, "It's early. You're still sober?" He invited me to drink beer with him and Ruslan at 3 o'clock, but I'm not going. I was with Ruslan last Thursday. I was eating a ponchik, or a donut, on the street when I met him. I asked him, "So where have you been?" "At the war," he said. I thought he meant the war of life in the figurative sense, until I realized he was talking about the actual war. He's a construction worker at the new airport they're building in Adler. Adler is right on the border, only a few miles from where the war is raging in Abkhazia. He makes 10,000 rubles a day there, which is really good. It's not steady work, though, because sometimes they run out of money to pay the workers, and then everything shuts down. Ruslan says it's mostly men from Yugoslavia working on this job. At this time, Yugoslavia was going through a bloody civil war of its own. "I'm rich," he said. So Ruslanchik, an endearment, a diminutive form of Ruslan, and I go to his aunt and uncle's place. Boris and another friend are there, and we're all sitting in this tiny kitchen with no air. They feed me wine and oranges. The party is merry and light-hearted. And they drink and drink and drink some more. Is there even a limit to how much a Russian can drink? I think not. He says, "You fooled me for 1 month with Emma." Emma was a name I made up. Then he asks me if I want a Kalashnikov, and I, like an idiot, say no. How could I have turned down a Kalashnikov? I mean, how many times does the average person get an offer like this? I'm still kicking myself. At the very least, I should have gotten a picture of me holding one. The guy beside me is arguing about Stalin with the aunt. Ruslan's uncle, who was a colonel in the army, stares morosely at the table, not saying a word. Then the aunt starts to play with a rather large knife that is lying on the table. She looks at Ruslan and starts to fume about something. Now she's angry and she's got the knife. I'm pretty sure she said something like, "What are you doing with her when you already have a girlfriend?" The uncle takes the knife out of the wife's hand and places it in the sink. The aunt reaches back, retrieves the knife out of the sink, and puts it back in front of her. I had to smile. Call me crazy. Her face is as stony as Steve McQueen's in The Cincinnati Kid, playing poker with Edward G. Robinson. Everybody goes quiet. There is a pause. Then they all start talking at once. Ruslan tells me that I would never have to worry about money when I'm with him. "Why go with an American when you can have a Russian?" he yells. Then he slaps his chest and shouts, "Russia! Forget about America. We are going to win the next war." Keep drinking and dream on, Ruschik. We finally leave, and Ruslan wants to take me to his girlfriend's place to drink, listen to music, and speak English. "You want to take me home to meet your girlfriend?" I tell him I can't go. I don't have time. I've got to go somewhere else. Yeah, that's it. I need to meet somebody somewhere. Like right now. As I'm talking, we are walking into a store, and Boris stumbles into a wall that is, oddly enough, made out of cardboard, and completely comes apart. God, that was funny. Everybody in the store turns their heads at exactly the same time to look. They look at Boris on the floor with utter contempt. And then they all turn back again. Nobody says a word, and life goes on. This is their life. Now we're back on the street, and Ruslan is trying to get a cab. He says, I'm not going anywhere, even if he has to get a gun and hold me. I have a feeling there are a lot more guns around this place than one would think. As soon as he manages to stop someone to give him a ride, I take his face in my hands, kiss him, and say, bye. He is so surprised he stands there frozen, and I leave them. I walked past the store the other day. The wall was back up, but you could see where it's broken all around the edges. It's 8 p.m. There is no hot water. This morning, there was no water. I hope you enjoyed Chapter 5, Practice, of A Wrinkle in the Old Cliff by Julia Frenz. May you always find a good book to read, and may all your stories end well. Thanks for listening.